A poll from the AP and NORC shows 41% of Americans last month reported being concerned about being able to afford groceries over the next few months, up from 24% in April.
Do you want to know why Americans are struggling? Probably because the price of groceries are insane. I just spent $73 on essentially one meal and a couple of extra things. I'll show you. Hold on.
A burrito shouldn't cost $20. Prices are out of control. People can't afford it.
In 2026, the thing that can financially ruin someone is not buying a house or a car. It is just everyday food. Yes, you heard that right. That is what is happening in this wealthy country. Food prices have gone through the roof. Tomatoes are up 40%. A burrito costs $20, and just paying for regular food can push a middle-class family into debt. So what is going on? Is it inflation, or is some big player behind this brutal price surge? Today, let's face a painful truth. Millions of Americans can no longer afford the cost of food. Let's find out why some people are working two jobs and still do not have enough to eat. And the story behind rising prices is much more complicated than you think, because an entire system is working together to trap you. This is a video you cannot afford to miss, because what is happening is not just something you read about in the news or see in statistics. You are the one paying the price every time you walk up to the checkout counter. It is not just houses or cars anymore, even food has become a burden. There was a time when Americans accepted going into debt to buy a house, buy a car, or go to college. At least they knew that money was buying an asset, a degree, something for the future. But now, for families already living right at the edge of their budget, one trip to the grocery store can be enough to financially wipe them out. Not to get richer, just to eat.
Somebody needs to explain to me why I can't afford this ground beef. I go into the supermarket, okay, because I'm looking for some ground beef for my lasagna and also for my spaghetti. I found the ground beef. Why is it $30? Who can afford that?
And do not think this is just a few people complaining online. An AP NORC poll found that 41% of American adults say they are very or extremely worried that they may not be able to afford food in the next few months. Just a few months earlier, that number was only about 24%. I find that number frightening because we are talking about food. You can put off buying a car, you can skip a vacation, but you cannot tell your child that dinner is a little too expensive this month, so maybe they can make up for it next year. And if you think 41% is only about worry, look at what people are actually doing. About 6 in 10 Americans say they have changed the way they buy food so they can still afford other necessities. They switch to cheaper brands, stop buying certain items, and eat out less. In other words, this has already moved beyond a survey and gone straight into the kitchen.
$6.15 for a half a pound of Greek hot sweet peppers. What the hell? Is this what you voted for? The highest fucking food cost I've ever seen in my entire life? $9 for some damn pizza sauce. $10 for a small pack of Starbucks coffee.
One person in Alabama said their family grocery bill has gone up by about $25 a week. $25 may not sound like much, but it comes back 4 times every month. More than $100 disappears without giving you a single extra meal. Another person in Arizona said the two of them used to spend about $100 a week, and now they regularly pay $130 to $140. And people are starting to react exactly the way you would expect. Some add up every item on their phone right there in the grocery store. Some bring a paper list, buy only what they truly need, and almost completely cut out impulse purchases. Some people even say they have almost stopped shopping the way they used to. No more wandering through the aisles. They go to produce, check the markdown section, see what is cheap enough, grab it, and leave. The discount section used to be where people hunted for bargains. Now for some people, it is deciding what they will eat for dinner. People think not having enough money for food means the refrigerator has to be completely empty. No, it usually starts much smaller than that. This week you skip the steak, next week you switch to cheaper meat. Then a few meals have no meat at all. If the fruit is not on sale, you leave it behind. And this is where I find the story really hard to accept. The people standing in the grocery store, counting every dollar, are still working. They are still getting paid. Some of them are working more than they used to. If working is still not enough to buy one normal week of food, then do not be so quick to tell them they need to work harder. We need to look at what those wages can actually buy. The $20 burrito shock one meal can eat up hours of work. If you want to understand how terrible the gap between income and food prices in America has become, look at this $20 burrito.
A spokesperson at Turning Point USA spilled the beans, posting that a college student recently complained to him about the rising cost of food, telling him a burrito shouldn't cost $20.
Do not look at it as food. Turn it into wages. If you make $20 an hour, almost one full hour of your work before taxes is sitting inside that burrito. If you live on the federal minimum wage of of $7.25 an hour, you have to work almost 3 hours just to earn $20, 3 hours of work, just to pay for one meal. But I think that Burrito is exposing something much bigger. Imagine standing behind a counter for 8 hours making food for other people, but 1 hour of your pay may not even be enough to buy the exact meal you just made. Sounds ridiculous, right? And then people say, if one job is not enough, get a second job. Fine. But what if you already have 2 jobs and you are still short?
You want to know what ruffles my feathers is groceries are so dang expensive. I have a family of 4 and I probably spend at least $200 a week on groceries alone. What is happening? And by the end of the week, we're ready to go back to the store because our fridge is about empty and my kids are fruit fiends. So yeah, I just bought bulk of strawberries at Aldi because they're 99 cents today. I practically have to take out a dang loan every month just to go grocery shopping. It's absolutely insane.
But that $20 burrito did not just fall out of the sky either. Before that, America was already talking about a Big Mac meal that came close to $18. A Five Guys bill over $20 shocked people too. Now it is the burrito. And that is what stands out. Burgers, burritos, fast food used to be the things people chose because they were quick and relatively affordable, but now one item after another is turning into a symbol for the same question. When did an ordinary meal start making me think this hard? Do you remember when a Chipotle burrito was only $6? If you remember that too, you will understand why the numbers in the news can sound ridiculous. They say food prices are up more than 4%, only 4%. What world are you living in? I have seen prices go up 40%, and most of the food I buy every week feels like it has gone up close to 100% since 2024, not to mention increases of 200% since the COVID outbreak began. And there is another very simple issue. You get paid, but before you even think about dinner, you have to pay rent or the mortgage, then the car insurance, utilities, gas. If there is a medical bill, you pay it. If you have debt, you pay that too. After all of that, whatever money is left becomes your food money. That is also why the line "stop complaining, get a job, eat ramen" sounds so irritating in this argument. Get a job, they already have jobs. Some people will take a second one, some people will say, just stop buying burritos and cook at home. Sounds reasonable, but we all know the grocery bill itself is making people count every dollar. And what about going to a cheaper store buying somewhere else? Sure, if you have that option near your home, if you have a car, and if you have the time. And before we ask what else people are supposed to cut, we need to ask the more important question. Why have food prices been pushed this high? Is it just inflation, or are there other things hiding behind the price of meat, eggs, vegetables, and even that $20 burrito? Inflation or greed, who is really driving food prices up?
Tomato prices are up 40% in the U.S. over the past year, and while it may not put as big a dent in your wallet as the rising cost of gas, it still can sting. So what's going on?
By now you are probably asking the same question I am, who is actually pushing food prices higher. One side says it is just inflation, the other says corporations are using the situation to make more money. But when you look at individual products, the story gets a lot more uncomfortable. First, it is painful to admit that lower inflation does not mean prices go back to where they were. Grocery prices rose 11.4% in 2022 alone, then another 5% in 2023, 1.2% in 2024, and 2.3% in 2025. The USDA expects another increase of about 2.7% in 2026. Imagine something going from $10 to $13. The next year it only goes up a little more. People can say the rate of increase has slowed down. That is true. But you are still paying more than $13. The old $10 price did not come back. And that is why average numbers can sound very different from what you actually see on the shelf. In May 2026, tomato prices in the United States were nearly 40% higher than 1 year earlier. Nearly 40%. For tomatoes, one of the most ordinary foods in salads, sandwiches, burgers, and dinners for millions of families. Part of the reason comes from supply and weather, but trade policy also matters. Starting in July 2025, the United States placed tariffs of about 17% on most fresh tomatoes imported from Mexico after ending an agreement that had allowed those tomatoes into the country without that tariff. Mexico is also an extremely important source of tomatoes for the American market. The AP even reported that one restaurant chain estimated higher tomato prices could cost it more than $1.7 million a year, while industry data showed grape tomato prices rising 65% in just 1 month. Restaurants pay more for ingredients, grocery stores pay more to bring products in. In the end, shoppers see that increase in menu prices or grocery bills, and if you think every price spike like this can at least be explained by saying there is a shortage, look at eggs. In March 2025, the average price of a dozen eggs in the United States hit a record of about $6.23. Bird flu was the direct cause. Millions of laying hens were killed and supply was hit hard. As flocks gradually recovered by May 2026, the average price had fallen below $2.20 a dozen. So when supply improves, prices really can come back down. If that were the whole story, it would be pretty easy to understand. But there is more. In June 2026, the United States Department of Justice and 17 states accused Cal-Maine Foods' Versova and Hickman's Egg Ranch of coordinating to influence benchmark price quotes used to set prices for billions of eggs from 2022 through March 2025. The lawsuit also said those quoted prices dropped significantly after the companies learned they were under investigation. The companies did not admit wrongdoing, and the proposed settlements still need court approval. So you have every right to ask, out of the more than $6 I once had to pay for a dozen eggs, how much came from bird flu, and was any part of it coming from the way prices were being set behind the market where I could not see it? Then we get to the case that I think gives any shopper a reason to be angry: Instacart. A shopper experiment found that 74% of the items tested appeared at more than one price. Among items with different prices, the average gap between the lowest and highest price was 13%, and some differed by as much as 23%. A dozen Lucerne eggs at the same Safeway once showed up at $3.99, $4.28, $4.59, $4.69, and $4.79 for different shoppers. The same item, the same store, almost the same time, but you may see a different price from somebody else. That is unfair. Why should you have to pay this price when someone else may be shown a lower one? And that is where the story shifts from prices to something much harsher, who is being forced to take the biggest hit. When someone wearing a Rolex teaches everyone else how to save money. Imagine standing in a grocery store, putting things in your cart while adding up every item on your phone. The total goes over your limit, so you pick up a package of meat, look at the price, and put it back. And right at that moment, someone wearing a Rolex worth thousands of dollars turns around and tells you that your problem is that you do not know how to budget. Would that make you angry? It would make me angry. Because the people who have already switched to cheaper brands stopped buying meat hunted for discounts and counted. Every dollar are often the exact people being told they still needed to cut more. Look at this number and you will understand why. In 2024, the lowest income households in America spent an average of about 33% of their income before taxes on food. For the highest income households, that number was only about 6.4%. Put simply, for every $100 of income, the people at the top spend about $6 on food. The people at the bottom have to spend about $33. Now, tomatoes are up nearly 40%, beef is up by double digits, and coffee costs more too. Someone with money can make a face and still put the item in the cart. But if you only have $80 left for the whole week, a few extra dollars can force you to take out the meat, the fruit, or something else. People with money pay more. People with less money have to eat differently, and do not think this is only a story about the poorest families. A lot of people are still working, still have a car, still pay for housing, and from the outside, still look middle class. But give them one car repair that costs $2,000, an unexpected medical bill, and then a few weeks of higher grocery prices. Their savings can start disappearing very quickly. You can still pay this month's bills, but add one more unexpected expense and next month could look very different. Then someone says, if you are short on money, work more. Fine, but how is a 72-year-old living on Social Security supposed to pick up an evening shift? Where is someone with back pain and diabetes who just retired supposed to stand for another 8 hours? Not everyone can get a second job. And for someone living on a fixed amount every month, food prices can go up, but the money they have to spend does not magically go up with them. And what about families with young children? If you live alone, you can tell yourself you will just eat instant noodles tonight and get through it. But when you have 2 growing children, what does eat cheaper actually mean? Less meat, less fruit. If breakfast used to be eggs, milk, and bread, which one do you cut now? Every way out comes with a cost, and Americans are paying with their time. Fine, if food is too expensive, let's try every piece of advice people keep giving. Get another job, cook at home, buy only what is on sale, drive farther to find a cheaper grocery store, buy local food. Every one of those ideas sounds reasonable, but try them one at a time and you see the problem very quickly. One job is not enough, get a second one, but a second job does not appear without taking something from you. You have to give up a few more hours to work more time, commuting more money for gas. If you have children who picks them up, if your shift ends at 9 at night, do you still have the energy to stand there and cook a whole meal from scratch? You make more money by working more hours, but there are still only 24 hours in a day. Working extra can save you during a hard month. I am not denying that, but if costs keep going up and the answer every year is work even more, then how many hours are you eventually supposed to work before it is considered enough? Then someone will say, fine, stop buying the $20 burrito. Go home and cook. Yes. Cooking at home is usually cheaper than eating out, but ingredients are not free. You still have to walk into the exact same grocery store we have been talking about since the beginning of this video. You still have to buy eggs, vegetables, meat, milk, and bread. And that is exactly where people have already been switching to cheaper brands, adding up every item on their phones, giving up things they like, and hunting for discounts. Then buy the cheapest version. Hunt for sales, eat simpler food. That can work. But there is a limit. Switching from an expensive brand to a cheaper one saves money. But if what you eat tonight depends entirely on what happens to be on sale, then you are no longer choosing dinner based on what you need. You are choosing based on what you can still afford. Then comes the next piece of advice. If this grocery store is expensive, go somewhere else. Fine if you have a car, if the cheaper store is only a few minutes away, if you did not just get off your second job, and most importantly, if there is actually another store where you live. For some people in rural areas or places with very few full grocery stores, go somewhere else can mean driving farther, spending more on gas, and losing another whole hour. An item that is $5 cheaper does not feel so cheap anymore if you burn almost that much gas just to go get it. What about buying local food? I understand the appeal. You know where the food comes from and you may be supporting producers near you. But not everyone has a farmer's market close to home, and local food is not always cheaper than the grocery store. Grow your own vegetables. Great if you have a yard, the physical ability, the time, and a few months to wait. So these ideas are not useless. Working more can bring in extra money. Cooking at home can save money. Sale items can help you get through a hard week. Driving farther can sometimes get you a better price. But in return, you give up more time, gas, money, energy, convenience, or the foods you actually want to eat. And after paying more, calculating, more driving, farther, and cutting back like that, at the very least, you should be able to trust one very basic thing. The food you bring home to your family is safe, right? Recalls after people get sick, is America preventing problems or chasing the damage?
What is going on in the produce aisle? First, you got the cyclospora that hit the lettuce, produce distributor Taylor Farms impacting restaurants like Taco Bell and McDonald's.
I just wanted to come on here and say I have the parasite. A few days ago, I had Taco Bell. Supposedly, the thing is confirmed. The lettuce in the tacos is what gave me the parasite.
You drove farther to get a lower price. You gave up foods you like, hunted for discounts, and stood in the grocery store counting every dollar. After all of that, there is one thing that should not be negotiable. The food you bring home to your family should be safe. But then cyclospora shows up. It is an intestinal parasite that can cause long-lasting diarrhea, dehydration, and exhaustion. It is serious enough that illnesses caused by cyclospora have to be reported in 47 states, Washington, D.C., and New York City. The problem is that cyclospora is very difficult to trace back to its source. By the time someone eats contaminated food, develops symptoms, sees a doctor, and gets a confirmed diagnosis, the bag of vegetables they bought may have been eaten and thrown away a long time ago. And this is what bothers me a lot of the time. People eat first, get sick first, and only then does the system start tracing backward to figure out what happened. In the investigation followed by the news report, lettuce was once suspected as a possible source. Later, the FDA said that sample had been a false positive. Correcting an incorrect result is something science has to do. But put yourself in the shopper's position today. You hear that a certain vegetable is under suspicion. A few days later, you hear that the sample was wrong while the real source is still unclear. So when you stand in front of the produce section tonight, what are you supposed to rely on to make your decision? And this case exposes a much bigger problem. It is not that America has no preventive measures. The Food Safety Modernization Act of 2011 was created specifically to strengthen produce handling standards, oversee imported food, and improve traceability. But even the expert in the news report admitted that progress has not been as strong as expected. There is another issue too. Food today moves through enormous supply chains. A bag of pre-cut vegetables can contain ingredients from many different plants and then be distributed to major retailers and restaurant chains. When many brands depend on the same large suppliers, one problem deep in the system can show up in many places that customers think have nothing to do with each other. And that is the real question. Does a wealthy country like America really have to wait until people get sick before it starts looking for the source, issuing warnings, and recalling products? Or are there places that put more barriers in place before the food ever reaches the shopper? How does Canada do it? How do some European countries do it? And more importantly, what exactly do they do better? What do Canada and Europe do differently from America when it comes to food safety? At this point, you may be thinking, so Canada or Europe must do a better job than America, right? It is not that simple. Europe still has outbreaks of foodborne illness. Canada still has product recalls. No place has built a wall that makes contaminated food disappear completely. But there is one question worth asking when regulators are not yet completely sure whether a product is dangerous. What do you want them to do? In the European Union, in some cases where there may be a serious risk, but the scientific evidence is still incomplete, Regulators can take temporary preventive action before everything has been proven all the way through. Put simply, a product is suspected of making people sick. You have two choices: stop it first and keep investigating afterward, or keep selling it until the evidence is strong enough. Which one would you choose? Then there is traceability. In Europe, food and ingredients have to be traceable through production and distribution. Canada also requires many businesses to keep records, so that when something goes wrong, authorities know where the product came from and where it was sent. Hearing that, you may ask, does America not do those things? Of course it does. America has had the Food Safety Modernization Act since 2011, and its whole purpose was to move from wait until people get sick and then respond toward preventing problems before they happen. So now the question gets uncomfortable. If that goal was written into law more than a decade ago, why do we still keep seeing the same familiar pattern? People get sick, an investigation starts, the source gets traced, and then warnings and recalls follow. Maybe the problem is not simply whether the law exists, it is whether there are enough people actually doing inspections, whether the data systems connect to each other, whether tracing is fast enough, and whether companies are truly being forced to stop risks before products reach store shelves. If paying a little more could help dangerous food get caught earlier, would you accept that? Or do you think Americans are already paying too much and the government simply needs to do a better job with the money it already has, because someone walking into a grocery store already has enough to worry about? They should not have to calculate how much money they have left, wonder whether they are being charged more than someone else, and then ask themselves whether the bag of vegetables they are bringing home to their children is safe. If buying ordinary food requires this much thought, then America's problem is much bigger than an expensive grocery bill. At first, the $20 burrito sounds like a story you can almost laugh about, but the closer you look, the harder it is to laugh, because when an ordinary meal costs more than several hourly minimum wages, you start to understand that the problem is no longer just the burrito. That is only one small piece of it. Tomatoes, beef eggs, coffee, and even a normal cart of groceries have all reached the point where too many people have to look at the price before they dare put something in the cart. And sometimes it feels like everything has been turned upside down in a way that is hard to believe. People used to work their whole lives hoping to buy a house, buy a car, and save for retirement. Now, for a lot of people, working hard all month sometimes means nothing more than making sure there will still be enough food in the refrigerator next week. What about you? How bad have your life and your grocery bills gotten? What have you had to stop buying? How have you changed the way you shop? Or have you even taken on extra work just to keep up? Do not hesitate to share in the comments. This is a place where we can speak openly about what we are actually going through. And if you want to keep having conversations like this, subscribe to the channel.